Good evening, and welcome to the channel. I'm so glad you're here tonight. You've had a long day, haven't you? Maybe it was busy, maybe it was quiet, but now it's time to unwind. To let go of all the noise, all the rushing, and let yourself drift into something softer. Tonight, I want to take you on a little journey. A story set in the magical stillness of a winter night in New York City. Together, we'll float above the snowy rooftops, glide through quiet streets, and discover the hidden beauty of a city that never truly sleeps. But tonight, it feels like it might be dreaming. This isn't just a story about a pigeon named Pearl. It's about finding calm in the chaos, warmth in the cold, and peace in the most unexpected places. As you listen, you might start to feel the tension in your shoulders ease. Your breathing might slow, your thoughts growing softer, like snowflakes falling gently from the sky. So, let me be your guide tonight. Your friend, here to help you let go of the day and settle into the quiet magic of the moment. Are you ready? Let's begin. The snow had stopped at last, leaving New York City shimmering like a scene from a snow globe. A soft hush wrapped itself around the streets, as if the city itself had paused to take a deep breath. Times Square, always alive with light and energy, seemed quieter tonight. The neon signs still glowed, but the falling snow had softened their edges, casting gentle reflections on the blanketed streets below. High above it all, on a snow-dusted rooftop, a small pigeon named Pearl fluffed her feathers against the crisp, wintry breeze. She loved moments like this, when the city slowed just enough to let its beauty shine through. Below her, the streets were nearly empty. A single cab rolled carefully through the snow, its headlights glowing softly in the misty air. Pearl tilted her head, her sharp black eyes catching the faint sparkle of stars peeking through the thinning clouds. The stars didn't often get their turn in a place like this, but tonight they danced above the city, sharing the sky with its endless lights. Pearl cooed quietly, as if greeting the stars, and spread her wings. With a soft whoosh, she lifted into the air, her flight smooth and deliberate, as if she were gliding through a dream. She soared over the rooftops, each one unique under its snowy blanket. Some were perfectly pristine, the snow undisturbed. Others glimmered faintly, strung with forgotten holiday lights that twinkled like hidden gems. The wind carried Pearl gently, guiding her toward a quiet corner of the city where the golden glow of a bakery window spilled out onto the snow-covered sidewalk. The warm scent of bread and cinnamon drifted upward, wrapping around her like a cozy blanket. She perched on the edge of the rooftop above, watching the baker inside moving with slow, practiced care. His hands rolled dough into perfect shapes, each movement deliberate and calm. The clinking of utensils and the faint hum of an old radio filled the small space, adding to the sense of peace. Pearl stayed for a while, basking in the warmth of the moment. Then, with a gentle flap of her wings, she took to the sky once more, her flight a graceful arc over the quiet, sleeping city. Pearl's wings carried her higher, and she glided effortlessly over the snow-covered streets, where the soft glow of streetlights cast long, golden shadows. She felt a gentle thrill in her chest as she soared over the quiet city, her feathers brushing through the crisp night air. The city looked so different from above, almost as if it had transformed into something new, something peaceful. The usual hum of car engines and hurried footsteps was replaced by the distant sound of wind moving through the trees, the faintest rustle of snowflakes landing softly on the ground. She passed over familiar landmarks, the looming towers of Midtown, their windows glowing like a sea of stars, and the quiet stretch of the Brooklyn Bridge, draped in a blanket of snow. Every inch of the city seemed to be wrapped in this quiet, serene calm, as though the streets themselves were resting, waiting for the world to wake up again. Pearl's wings sliced through the air with a steady rhythm, almost in tune with the gentle pulse of the city beneath her. As she flew, she spotted a glimmer in the distance, a tiny twinkling light peeking through the canopy of snow-dusted trees. It was a hidden garden tucked away on a rooftop, far from the busy streets below. The kind of place most people never knew existed, where the noise of the world couldn't reach, and the only sounds were the whispering wind and the soft drip of melting icicles. Pearl felt drawn to it, as if something in her soul was telling her this was where she needed to be. She circled down slowly, her wings catching the wind and carrying her gently toward the peaceful rooftop garden. The garden was small but magical, filled with evergreen trees, each one dusted with snow, their branches bending slightly under the weight of the cold. Twinkling lights, hidden among the branches, cast a soft glow that made the garden feel like a secret world, suspended between the stars and the earth. Pearl landed on a low wooden fence that circled the garden, her tiny feet making no sound as they touched the surface. She tucked her wings in close, feeling the soft, welcoming embrace of the quiet space around her. The air was filled with the fresh scent of pine and something else, something warm, like the comfort of a home. She took a deep breath, letting the calm of the garden wash over her, and closed her eyes for just a moment. It was in this perfect stillness that she heard the faintest sound, a soft melody carried by the wind from somewhere below. A saxophone playing a slow, gentle tune, its notes floating upward into the night. The music seemed to echo the very rhythm of the city's heartbeat, slow, soothing, and full of longing. Pearl listened, her eyes half closed, letting the melody become a part of the night, a lullaby for the world asleep below. She perched there for what felt like hours, simply existing in the peace of the garden and the melody of the saxophone. Time seemed to stretch, like the snowflakes that lingered in the air, not rushing to land but floating gracefully, their journey as important as their destination. Everything around her felt perfect in its stillness, the soft glow of the lights, the quiet drift of snow, and the music that filled the air. Eventually, Pearl gave a soft chirp, as if thanking the garden for its peace, and with a gentle push of her wings, she lifted into the air once again. The snow had stopped falling, but the city was still wrapped in its winter quiet, like a deep, peaceful sleep. Pearl soared through the crisp night air, her wings cutting through the cold with ease as she made her way over the rooftops once again, her flight slow and graceful, almost as if she were part of the night itself. She passed over more familiar streets, the softly glowing lights of Broadway, the quiet stretch of the East River, its waters glistening like liquid glass beneath the city's distant lights. Everything was so still, so calm, that it felt as though the city was wrapped in a dream. For a moment, Pearl wondered if the city was dreaming of her, or if she was dreaming of the city. Perhaps it didn't matter. The two of them, her wings and the lights below, were a part of something greater, something that existed only in this perfect, quiet winter night. And as Pearl's wings beat slowly, taking her higher into the air. The lights of the city seemed to grow fainter until they merged with the stars above. She flew on, her journey continuing through the calm and quiet, a quiet rhythm that matched the peaceful heartbeat of the city beneath her. Pearl continued her gentle flight, her wings slicing through the crisp winter air with the kind of effortless grace only found in moments of peace. The city stretched out below her, but it felt distant, as if she were floating between two worlds, one where the city hummed with life, and another where everything was silent and serene. Her mind drifted, carried by the wind, as she looked down at the city's glowing lights, now soft and muted under the blanket of snow. As she passed over the still waters of the Hudson River, she could see the faint reflection of the skyscrapers dancing on the surface. It was as if the river itself were holding a secret, capturing the magic of the city in its quiet embrace. The water moved slowly, the waves barely rippling beneath the weight of the night's calm. Pearl's flight slowed as she approached a familiar part of the city, a peaceful little neighborhood tucked away in the heart of Manhattan. Here, the streets were narrower, the buildings older, and the snow piled higher. The soft glow from streetlights reflected off the snow, casting a golden haze that seemed to wrap the world in a warm embrace. Pearl had always loved this part of the city, where the hustle and bustle gave way to slower rhythms, where each step felt like a story waiting to be told. She glided lower, her wings brushing the rooftops as she passed over rows of brownstones. In one window, she could see a family preparing for bed, their laughter soft in the quiet of the night. In another, the glow of a bedside lamp cast long shadows as someone read a book, their silhouette peaceful and content. As Pearl flew on, she noticed the stillness of the streets below. The occasional car passed by, its headlights casting a brief flash of light against the snowy sidewalks. But for the most part, the city seemed to be in a deep sleep, a calmness settling over everything. Even the trees, their branches heavy with snow, stood still, as if they too were resting. The night had settled into something even deeper, more intimate. The lights of the city seemed to fade, as if they were retreating into the shadows, allowing the stars above to shine even brighter. Pearl's wings beat in perfect harmony with the gentle rhythm of the night. She felt a connection to everything: the city, the snow, the stars. It was as if they were all part of one single, living thing, moving through the world together, gently, slowly, quietly. As she soared over the city, Pearl saw something in the distance, a park, its winding paths almost invisible beneath the blanket of snow. It was Central Park, the heart of the city, and yet, tonight, it felt like a hidden treasure, tucked away from the noise of the world. The trees, their bare branches reaching up to the sky, looked like delicate lacework against the soft, fading light. She circled down, feeling the coolness of the air grow sharper as she approached the park's edge. She landed softly on a tall oak tree, its bark rough beneath her feet, but the snow around it cushioned her landing. From her perch, she could see the snow-dusted paths winding through the park, each one leading to another quiet corner, another peaceful space. The stillness was almost overwhelming, as if the world itself had forgotten to move. Pearl sat quietly, her small form almost blending with the snow-covered branches. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in the cold air, and let herself sink into the serenity around her. For a long time, she just sat there, taking in the beauty of the winter night. the soft crunch of snow underfoot, the faint rustling of wind through the trees, and the distant sound of a saxophone playing somewhere in the distance. The music was like a lullaby, gently floating through the park, its notes wrapping around her like a warm blanket. It was the kind of music that made you want to close your eyes and let the world disappear, if only for a moment. Eventually, Pearl's wings fluttered softly, ready to continue her journey. She took one last look at the park, its quiet beauty, and the peacefulness that seemed to hold everything in place. Then, with a single push of her wings, she was off again, soaring higher into the night sky. The city below had become a blur of lights and snow, a peaceful dream she was floating above. The stars seemed closer now, their light brighter against the dark sky. Pearl flew on, her heart light, her wings steady, and the rhythm of the city fading into the background, replaced by the soft pulse of the world at rest. Pearl continued her flight through the serene night, her wings gently cutting through the cold air. As she soared higher, the world below seemed to grow smaller, the city lights merging with the distant stars, blending into a sea of twinkling lights. The soft hum of the city, once so familiar, had now faded into a distant whisper, leaving only the peaceful silence of the winter night. The stars above shone with a brilliance that felt almost magical, their light casting a gentle glow across the snow-covered streets below. For a moment, Pearl wondered if the city was dreaming, if the lights and shadows were all part of a dream, woven together by the night. She felt as though she were floating in that dream, part of the quiet symphony of the world at rest. As she flew, her wings gliding effortlessly through the air, Pearl felt a sense of deep contentment. The journey had been long, but it had been filled with moments of peace, of beauty, and of connection. She had flown over the rooftops, through the quiet streets, and across the snow-covered park, each moment a brush stroke in the painting of this magical winter night. The city was still asleep, its heart beating softly beneath the layers of snow, and Pearl was content to be a part of it all. There was no rush now, no hurry. The night was endless, stretching out in front of her like a vast, peaceful ocean, and she was free to float wherever the wind would take her. As she passed over the river again, the water's surface glistening in the moonlight, Pearl felt the coolness of the air wrap around her. The river seemed to whisper to her, as if inviting her to continue her journey, to follow the flow of the world as it drifted through the night. She dipped her wings, feeling the slight pull of the current beneath her, as if the river itself was guiding her forward. But even as she moved forward, she couldn't help but feel a quiet longing. She looked back over her shoulder at the city below, the lights still sparkling in the distance, and she realized that even in the stillness of the night, there was something constant about the city. It was always there, always waiting, always humming with life, even when the streets were empty and the world seemed to be holding its breath. Pearl's wings beat steadily as she moved onward, her flight slow and calm, as if she were savoring each moment. She passed over the streets of the city once more, her heart light, her thoughts peaceful. The music from the distant saxophone still echoed in the air, a soft, soothing melody that seemed to speak to her soul. It was as if the city itself was offering her a lullaby, a quiet invitation to let go of all the noise, all the rushing, and simply be. She turned toward the horizon, where the first light of dawn was beginning to touch the edges of the sky. The stars were beginning to fade, their light giving way to the soft blush of morning. But even as the night made way for the day, Pearl didn't feel sadness or loss. Instead, there was a sense of calm, of fulfillment. The city, the winter night, the journey, it was all part of a beautiful, never-ending cycle. As the first rays of sunlight touched the skyline, Pearl slowed her flight, feeling the warmth of the new day begin to seep into the cool air. She let herself glide, her wings gently catching the morning breeze as she began to make her way back toward her rooftop home. The city below was still, waiting for the day to begin, and Pearl was content to let the morning unfold at its own pace. She landed softly on the rooftop, her feathers ruffling slightly as she tucked them in. The city was still, the streets quiet, and the world seemed to have paused for just a moment. Pearl settled into her spot, wrapping her wings around her, and closed her eyes. The night had been long, but it had been beautiful. And as the city began to stir with the first light of day, Pearl drifted into a peaceful rest, content with the quiet beauty of the world around her.